This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey!
Hello everyone and welcome to Shipwrecked Comatose, the Red Dwarf podcast here on the We Made This Podcast Network. And welcome along to our continuing coverage of Red Dwarf 10. This week we are talking, not Trojan, but Fathers and Sons. Sons, S-U-N-S. It's a pun. You like a pun, Mark?
It's a pun. It's a pun.
It's a pun.
I like a pun.
Joining us, same as last week, is Mark Adams and Matt Latham. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm fine, thank you.
Excellent. And Mark, how are you doing now? We've got one episode down.
I'm still giddy as fuck. I love it. I'm delighted that there's New Dwarf.
New Dwarf. More to come, but we are now coming into the second episode, which is Fathers and Sons, as I said. It was aired on the 11th of October, 2012. So, this one, we're talking about continuity, is another one that's an interesting development because we're kind of going back to the Ouroboros story. What did you make to this one, Matt? First up, what are your general thoughts?
In fact, this is another one that I quite like. I think I really quite like this one. I think the interesting part of it being a story that would not be able to have been done as a standalone. You have to have had knowledge of Red Dwarf lore or in the Ouroboros episode in order to just understand the whole concept of it. I really quite like that because it means there's development going on. Wasn't really commonplace much in sitcoms when Red Dwarf first started, and it's always something that Red Dwarfs try to kind of play with in terms of attempting to be serialized. But here it's like full on. If this is the first time watching it, you might be slightly confused.
Yeah, it felt like the opposite to what they did in the last episode, where it was like, welcome back to Red Dwarf. This is a gentle reboot, and this is like, whoa, deep cut.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, it does a good job of explaining things, I think.
Yeah, and I think it had to. It's a little bit exposition-y, but it had to be, I think, at the start of this episode. There's no way this episode would make sense if they hadn't done quite exposition-y exposition.
As a second episode then, Mark, what do you make to this one? Continuing on a bit, as I say, the Red Dwarf 10 thing, there's I'm sure we'll talk about kind of even like the first few seconds and minutes of this episode. We're doing what we did in Trojan, where there's bits like the Dentibot, the Rimmer not hearing the sound, and stuff like that as well. So there's that continuation of the stories that threaded through the whole entire episode. But what do you make generally to this episode?
It was a huge amount of fun. Like Matt said, it was a brave thing to do a sequel to Ouroboros. And we'll get into the conversation about Chinese Whispers quite deeply, I suspect.
Yeah, I think we need to because I have some thoughts on it. So we'll see. And it's that aspect of it, which we'll talk about, has been playing on my mind for some time. And I have difficulty passing my thoughts on it. I think I have landed on some interesting thoughts, but we'll talk about that as we get into there. Yeah, so shall we dive in and talk about the episode? So as I say, from the very beginning, we see Lister playing some games on the couch that you can see behind me for those people who aren't watching on the screen. As I say, we've got the Red Dwarf background on. He's on that seat. He's playing a bit of games. He's talking about his dentist thing. The cat comes in. The cat's outfit, Mark. The cat's outfit twice in a row.
Oh, just don't. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful.
Cat calls Gummy and Rimmer comes in and making that noise again. That noise thing, the tinnitus kind of idea, the concept that people can't hear stuff is interesting. I think at a push you could say because the hologram can hear it that no one else can. Like similar to what teenagers can do and things like that, which is interesting. But I think it's just there just to play off off one another, really, isn't it?
Either that or just to start generating mystery of things that's happening and stuff. But again, it's like it's doing it in a different way. This episode's doing it in a different way, but it's trying to incorporate different plot lines and subplots into each other in a similar way that Trojan did, and it's doing that quite quickly. So you've got Lister and the dentist chair, and then you've got the mysterious noise that Rimmer's making. So setting up these different plot threads that's going to eventually converge with each other. But yeah, so it's on the same foot again. It's like series 10's got this idea of doing more like A, B, C plots.
Yeah.
Which do converge to each other. So they're setting them up quite quickly, and it's quite the pacing of it's I think slightly quicker than perhaps Trojan is. Most Trojan kind of beds in things in like the first scene with just a Lister and Cat. This is like incorporating the whole of the more or less the majority of the ensemble in the first instance.
We do get to they go to the table and they start talking about various different things and how Lister is going to get drunk because it's his birthday.
He doesn't say drunk though. He says kashnickered.
I'm going to get drunk, and then he says kashnickered. I'm going to get absolutely kashnickered.
I like the word kashnickered. It isn't quotable dwarf because quotable dwarf, as we established in the last episode, is something that has just it's like penetrated my brain from childhood. But I will use this. I like kashnickered. I hadn't heard kashnickered to describe drunk before, and next time I get drunk, I'm going to get kashnickered.
Are you going to get talking traffic cone, hugged, paving, licked, kashnickered?
Yes. I've never licked a pavement, but I have hugged a traffic cone. Yeah.
You've hugged a traffic cone.
And a tree.
I know somebody that tried to get off with a lamppost because they're that drunk.
I haven't done that.
I spent 5 minutes there and get a projector.
Okay.
Was she pretty?
I think it was an NEC model, I think. It was an NEC because it was very similar to the ones we used to have at work. No, okay, imagine the most boring person you can think of, times it by 2, and you're halfway to me.
Bless him. I actually, this is an interesting conversation. I was in Faliraki, right? And I don't know if I've told you this.
And you got kashnickered.
Right? Even to the point where Chesney Hawkes was on in a nightclub. I might have told this story before. Chesney Hawkes was on in a nightclub, so we went to see him, and my mate was standing next to me, and I did a Del Boy. The wall had a cove in it, so I fell over, and I landed on the floor. I was that drunk that I couldn't get up. My mate Dave turned to the right to see where he could see where I went. He didn't know where I'd gone to, and then proceeded to go right round the nightclub to try and find me, and I was still stuck on the floor in this little alcove that I'd fell over and totally Del Boyed it.
Dignified.
Yeah. It was all right. I was on the floor. It was a bottle, so I'd still have a drink with us. But yeah, that was what I did.
In my 20s, I ran out of fingers and toes to count the number of times I passed out in a nightclub and been asked to leave.
Majority of the times I ended up, in order for me to actually go out, I ended up driving. Anyway, so I was on the soft drinks. So I was driving everywhere. There's only been not many times that I've been out or the opportunity to go out and get drunk and fussed about it. I can't remember the last time I was actually drunk.
I was shocking in my 20s. I got kashnickered every fucking weekend. And the problem is when I've drunk too much, I'm like, dance, fall asleep. And
so you just literally like one of those.
That's exactly what I did. Yeah. And that's exactly what I did in over 20 nightclubs in my 20s. I haven't done that for, it's got to be 20 years.
There's an apparent phenomenon that apparently occurs. There's a sweet spot where drunk Latham turns up.
Yes.
And apparently drunk Latham.
I've seen drunk Latham's dance it.
I would like to see
on the
drunk
video.
Latham's dancing.
I've seen the video.
Not live.
I've not seen drunk Latham's live.
No. Yes.
I've seen like a happy Latham, but I've not seen drunk Latham. That was live. I saw that live in person. But he was good enough to go home, so I didn't see it. And then obviously me and Luke went on to a drum and bass nightclub, as you do in your 40s.
Yeah.
Not wrong with that.
You know, these things are sent to try us. Anyway,
did you get
Got kashnickered.
Did you? Good.
Yeah, it was good.
Kashnickered.
Yeah. Anyway, it's Father's Day, And there's a conversation, and as I say, like we said at the top of the hour, there's the whole explanation with kind of like the exposition piece where Rimmer's going, but you're your own dad. And the card comes out. And then we get Crichton that makes the appearance, obviously, for the new card that he's going to have, because obviously he hasn't written the first card yet. He's got the new card. The card from last year comes.
But there's also the kind of key point where he says that he drinks himself into oblivion, so he can't remember the night before.
He gets kashnickers.
Yeah. On Gelf Hooch as well. Gelf Hooch is what he gets thing, and it's not his fault that due to some time traveling paradoxic sci-fi smeg that he's his own dad.
I used to drink hooch, not Gelf Hooch, like Reef and alcoholic lemonade.
Reef.
I used to get kashnickered on hooch.
Did you strawpedo it? Is that what you used to do? Do you strawpedo?
Yes.
I never tried straw. No, I think I tried it once and failed, and I never did it again.
The thing about strawpedos, we used to call them bottle bongs as well. You could do it dead easy, but I just belched for the entire night after that.
It was, it ended up being a bit gassy.
My acid reflux is flared just thinking about it.
The acid reflux. Oh my god, yeah. I would still drink lager until I just couldn't drink it anymore, and strawpedo was my next step before getting the shots, because I wasn't a shot drinker. It was always like, right, okay, we can't do any more. Last rounds would be bottles. And I rather, I don't know whether to say this or not, because it is quite gross, but there was one time I was in the local working men's club where I was that drunk that I started to strawpedo, kashnickered, cone hugging as well, that I needed to go on to Smirnoff Ice because I just couldn't drink anymore. I strawpedoed that, and I still had a few of them. And then, towards the end of the night, bearing in mind this was only like midnight, I then threw up into a pint glass, and it was a perfect pint. It was a perfect pint, and even had a head on it. And then an old woman, apparently, because I don't remember this, but my friend said this, an old woman said, "Is he going to drink that?"
Why did she want it?
I think so. But she didn't know. And then they took the glass, and apparently it was boiling hot. It was really hot.
Drinking other people's sick is the kind of fetish that you don't want to hear about, isn't it?
Exactly. Matt's even taking his earphones off.
I am very, very squeamish.
Okay. Yeah, but it was perfect. Absolutely to the brim, had head, the lot.
Kirschnicken and comatose only on the podcast.
I did manage to, if we're talking about puke, because it freaks out Matt, I did manage to, right, you know, everyone's got a drink that you don't drink anymore because in your youth it was the one that fucked you. Mine is cider, and on my 18th or 19th birthday, I can't remember which one, my mate Pete was driving his dad's posh car, and I was sat in the front, and I was kashnickered, and I must have been drinking something pink, maybe red wine or something. I was like, I'm going to be sick. And then I put my head out the window and yacked. And it was like he got a fucking racing stripe on his dad's car with my sick. It was rank. Absolutely rank.
Another one for us, like when we're in the band, and this wasn't that long ago, actually. This wasn't that long ago. There was a bang on the door, and I was driving at this point, and I'd seen some police activity, and we had people in the van that we shouldn't have had in the van. And they were saying, "Can you get? I need to get out. I need to get out. I need to get out. I need to puke. I need to puke." So he opened the side door, and he got out, and proceeded to like literally fall flat on his face before he puked. But what he actually fell flat into was a full bed of nettles, face first, the entire thing. Like the entire body was like stinging and everything for days.
You have been listening to Drinks, Nectar and Comatose.
Nice.
It's just been winding that up. Okay, let's talk about dreads. Because that's the present he gets. He gets some dreads. Oh. Oh.
And a poppadom.
Oh, like a poppadom.
So yeah, so I know Crucible Dwarf might not be a thing for you, Mark, but I was watching this thing Sunday evening. Sunday evening. Well, yesterday. But the night before, I had a Indian takeaway. I was watching Doctor Who, and so I had a poppadom with it. And like, just as I was finished, I still realised that I still had a bit of poppadom that was hidden under my plate that had. And stuff like, oh, it's a bit of poppadom. So, but the thing is, that's not the first time that's like crossing my head. So now, every time that I end up, if I'm having an Indian meal or something and there's poppadoms involved, it's like, oh, a bit of poppadom.
Oh.
I'm not doing it.
Oh. Oh.
Oh.
Oh.
Wait a minute. How can you even stand your own dad? He abandoned you in a pub in a cardboard box. I love that. I know it's a bit exposition-y, but I kind of like the fact that you can play that both ways. And I like the fact that they've done that little bit of a dichotomy. I think it's quite good.
It's very clever.
But also quite like, I think it's Rimmer being Rimmer, but also he's not being mean. So he's not just meant to try and take him down. I think he's trying to give just a dose of reality to Lister. Even though technically it's absurd that he's still a bit absurd that he's actually talking about himself, that he got himself in a box. But I quite like that how Rimmer's characterised here.
Okay, shall we talk about I slit the sheet, I slit the sheet?
I mean, you just did, and I'm not going to try and say it.
The Rimmer Crichton storyline with the dispensers. Okay, so Mark, let you start with this. How are you feeling about this thread right the way through? Because there's some elements that are interesting. I just wondered to get your take on this part of the show.
So it's a brave thing to tackle, and in a lot of ways they treat it with some sensitivity. The major problem is that the character of Taiwan Tony isn't played by someone from that ethnic background. That is a huge problem. It feels like they should have known better by now. But if we highlight that and point that out, it is actually quite an interesting idea. And it's quite a clever gag that the way I'm going to use the scientific term because funnily enough, I had a look up. I don't want to use the word. I don't really want to refer to that game as Chinese Whispers anymore. So I looked it up. There is a term for it in cultural evolution research. It's called transmission chaining, which is completely and utterly soulless. Americans use the term telephone or broken telephone. In China, they call it geese to geese. And in France, they call it Arab phone. So France has the same issue that we have in the UK. I definitely wouldn't call it Arab phone either.
That sounds like a really crap girls' game from the 90s. So you got Dream Phone.
I had a copy of Dream Phone, like 20 years later, but I did have a go at Dream Phone. And, you know, there's different contexts, usages of Chinese Whispers. There's like, Chinese Whispers is a game, but also when something has been miscommunicated, people would say that it was all Chinese Whispers as well. For that, I would use crossed wires, and I have used crossed wires much more than I would have ever used Chinese Whispers, just coincidentally. I don't think that that's really used in that context anymore. And also, who plays that game anymore? It's well old, and we've got games consoles.
I had to do a similar thing for my university degree that I'm currently doing, which I'm sure most people have done before or they've had variations of this, is where the class had to sit back to back. So, you know, you're just in a normal classroom, you just get told, like, you need to sit away, look at a wall. Doesn't matter where you are, as long as you just like, because we're in a kind of U shape, so you could look to the wall. And you had to count to the number of people, like count to 10 or count to 15 or count to 20. But you weren't allowed to pass any information on. So you had to work out. And then if somebody said something at the same time, you would have to then start again. and it was all about like sort of working out the teamwork and how you would actually do it. So it'd be kind of like, people would start and it'd be like 1, 2, there'd be a massive gap, and then someone would say, 2 people would say 3, and it's trying to work out without just verbal communication, trying to work out how you do something, but while you're actually doing it. And I thought that was an interesting take, but it just goes to show how key communication is, because, often we talk about like sort of verbal, but the non-verbal is really important. If we go to talk about this particular thing, and the thing that, like you say, I think it is the thing I've been struggling with for quite some time with it, because like you say, the soulless transmission is an interesting point, and telephones probably, I've heard that being mentioned actually at some point in the long distant past. I've completely forgot it was called that at some point. But what I find fascinating with the way that they display it here, and as you say, they try to do, is I find really fascinating, because they're trying to portray Rimmer in a position of, I'm trying to do my best, but I might get it wrong. And I quite like that concept of like him going, I think you'll find it's racist, and I think him trying to like see that and develop that and not necessarily get it. And I like that, because he says it in those little hats, which is like, oh, okay, but he's trying. And I do like that concept of like, he's at least taking it on board and moving it on. And then it's just left to the rest of the site. And then obviously the dispensers take it up after that.
So I did read a few articles on it written by people of Chinese backgrounds, and essentially the general consensus is that the term Chinese whispers isn't racist. It's culturally insensitive, and you should probably try harder, but racism suggests intent, whereas this name is from way beyond when there was any kind of intent, and it's not the same way as actively using a curse word against a person of that background. I won't use that again. I will probably use, like I say, crossed wires, but it's, I also wouldn't use it's all Greek to me either, because again, it's similar context. I wouldn't use the term double Dutch. It's a similar context. There's no hatred behind them per se. It's just a bit kind of, you should do a bit better. The only real issue I have with this, to be honest with you, I think, again, 12 years ago, we probably weren't as aware of cultural insensitivity as we are now. The only issue I have with it is that Taiwan Tony isn't Chinese or Taiwanese, and it's a shame, because otherwise I think they actually address it relatively well.
So while you was talking, I googled The Problem with Apu, which is a documentary film from 2017 where the comedian Harry Kondabolu talked about the casting of the character of Apu from The Simpsons, and the fact that it's been done by Hank Azaria, and the kind of the problematic connotations around it. And that's about 5 years from this. So that conversation of casting roles of race, like characters of race, or vocal characters of race, with voice actors of the same heritage type thing. That's still a kind of recent thing. I think Big Mouth, I think it was season 4, they recast the character of Missy with an African-American actress, because she was voiced by a white actress for about 3 seasons. But they actually tied that in with the new voice actress, with the character fight, like looking into a kind of family heritage and stuff, and embracing black culture as part of a character arc and everything. Or the sensitivity towards racial casting of characters and actors of the same race. I don't think that was probably as culturally aware as it has been now back in 2012. I still think that's kind of relatively recent kind of cultural shift.
I think you're right. I think they might have probably considered it, but it wasn't something that was as prominent as it was until after the problem with the poo. You're right.
What's quite interesting is that so I read into the problem with the poo and stuff is Hank Azaria's kind of reaction to it. He stepped away instantly. He says, "You know what, we'll step aside." And I think he actually went on to go to talks and kind of read into the kind of like concept of stereotyping and casting stuff. So he kind of ended up kind of when people say, "Oh, I'm going to go off to learn and reflect on my actions and stuff," and there's never any kind of malice between that casting, and I don't think there's malice here. I don't think there's kind of like deliberately racist malice in here as well.
No, not at all.
As well, but
the fact they're tackling it suggests that they're not racist.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But I think, but Hank Azaria kind of went back and said that. Went through and actually kind of went on courses and talks and lectures around the subject to kind of educate himself on that afterwards. And it's one of the few instances where, like, because you have kind of apologies where I'm going to go back and reflect on actions and stuff, and they never do. Whereas I think because of this, Hank Azaria actually has done that.
Mm.
It's an interesting cultural shift of things that happen and stuff, which kind of which makes sense, which probably should have done earlier, but.
It's an important one, but it hadn't happened before this episode. So we had to highlight it because, well, frankly, I'm me. But I think it is what it is, where we can kind of like retroactively go, it wasn't okay then, it isn't okay now. But during the time, I think it was a genuine mistake rather than having any malice.
I think the actual subplot's role is to try and tackle, or kind of trying to tackle the idea of that cultural.
It just fell into it. Didn't it?
Inadvertent kind of, like inadvertent catering. So like it's the idea. Oh, are Chinese whispers racist? He's like they're actually tackling that.
And I guess what's frustrating is that they'd used Richard Ng in Back to Earth. They could have just given him a call.
Yeah, it's a vocal thing as well, isn't it? So it didn't need to be on set. Even in 2012, he could have done that. So yeah, okay. The only other thing with that joke is the finish, and again how stories join together in this ABC plot kind of thing, in that stasis is the key word, which is why the racist thing has to happen. It's because it's got to go from racist to stasis, and I do think it's a little bit weak. But having said that, we are looking about the next scene, which is in the Dentibot, and I know this is a bit of a love-hate for certain people that I've seen online and things, but I love the Dentibot. Tough love. And it's quite clever, the story, isn't it? With it having, like, obviously it's his own dad that set up Dave Lister Jr. in the file, so then we can release that later on in the episode. What do you make to the actual scene and also the actual area, because it's an interesting part of the ship?
I think what's interesting is that, it was a electronic head projected onto a screen, and then they talk about Holly later on. I really missed Holly because of this.
Okay.
And I want more Hattie. And do we know why there wasn't Holly in this series? Was it budgetary, or did Norman say no because he saw his arse that he wasn't in Back to Earth, or do we know why?
I just think it's probably the same reason they didn't include Holly in Series 6 in that. And I think this is something that, as much as I really liked, as I love Series 5, it was gradually clear that Holly was just getting redundant as a character, because a lot of the exposition that Holly would deliver was just being shunted to Crichton. So Crichton was getting all that dialogue anyway. So Holly wasn't really needed at any point anymore. In terms of in terms of the ensemble, in terms of the running of the ship, then definitely yes. But in terms of the cast, it was getting clear they was just struggling to give Holly stuff to do.
Yeah,
because Crichton was getting all the exposition.
If you think about that last episode being a Rimmer episode, this episode is a Lister episode as well. As it needs to focus on that. And I know there's obviously like Rimmer parts in this, and it's interesting in the Dentibot thing that he does say, "Oh, well, read a book," which is like kind of a returning thing to the show, which I thought was a nice touch. And then obviously thinks he's Hendrix and stuff. So all of that is all playing into that. If you haven't seen Red Dwarf before, I'm my own dad. This is the ethos and the mythology of the show. I'm not going anywhere. I'm a bit of a bum. Well, he doesn't say bum, does he? He says, I'm not a bum. He's not a bum. He's a total bum. Maybe a bum, maybe, not a total bum, which I thought was a nice touch, actually.
Which reminded me again of Holly when she called him a space bum.
Oh, you see, it reminds me of Justice. Is it Justice or Quizzer? Bum. and even like sort of how evil that Medibot gets when it's like aesthetic. It's really evil.
It's not quite the Doctor in Star Trek, is it?
In this scene as well, is that also the idea of like, because like the Medibot doesn't know about the fact that Lister's talking about himself. Because we'll set up a new file for Dave Lister, for your son. What's the name? Dave Lister. Oh, Dave Lister Jr. Because okay then. So and that's quite an important part of the story. So it's a kind of like, again, throwaway moment that becomes like a key part of resolving the actual problem that the ship finds itself in. So again, it's like these different seedings of plots and stories kicking in,
definitely,
and paying off.
Yeah, nicely woven together again. So the next scene, we've got Crichton and Rimmer together again. Seems to be a recurring theme, and they're ready to launch the new computer. Not Holly, Mark. This is the new computer. This is pre.
Well, this is Cassandra.
This is pre. Is it?
This is Cassandra.
Is it Cassandra? Is it Cassandra?
It's so Cassandra
can see the future. Pre predicts it. There's two different. It's two different things. I think.
It feels very similar very soon, because Cassandra was Series 8, right? Back to Earth doesn't count. This is literally the next series. This is basically the next series. So whilst it was fun and she was cool, she was basically kind of Cassandra Queeg, really. I'm not super cross about it, but if I was going to be critical, it would be that they have brought a character similar to Cassandra back too soon. Might have been nice to have had Cassandra back, actually.
I don't know. He's 14 years too soon.
That's a good point. That's suppose. And no fucker watched Series 8 more than once.
Shade.
I did.
Shall we?
Because you love Pete Part 2 so much, innit?
Yes. That's exactly what it is.
In it.
Yeah. But I do like I do just quite like the kind of like the character creation screen. Like the RPG stuff, it goes, it doesn't really matter. Doesn't 25? Doesn't really matter. Just put 25.
Well, it's okay. I'll pick the first one. Hang on.
You don't just pick the first one.
It's a level of shallow that is very funny about Rimmer, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And it's just like he keeps like sort of pointing down. He keeps going, "What's that one down there?" Well, that's 36D, sir.
Yeah, just pick that one. No, Crichton. And again, then this is another example of this series focusing on the fact that Rimmer's actually technically like the superior officer of everyone goes, don't make me pull rank. I'm pulling rank. Don't make me do it. I'm ordering you to select 30.
Yeah. I don't know why you're making a fuss about this. Just select 30.
It escalates, doesn't it? Yeah. And Crichton's complete and utter cluelessness is brilliant because, as we've established, the character's basically asexual.
And then when he selects the frame size, which is always fascinating, when because Rimmer's going, no, that's not the frame size I want.
Again, I think 2 Holly-alikes in one episode make me go, oh.
It's true, yeah. I didn't think of it as like in that perspective that they have got two like AI robots kind of thing.
I think the difference being is this is actually too intelligent for their own good. Like Pre's kind of like predictive behaviour stuff. It's your like old school Red Dwarf gimmicky episode kind of thing, where it's like they find a kind of sci-fi gimmick or idea and they run with it. So like you take your backwards or your white holes and stuff. where they've got like a sci-fi gimmick and they're playing with it.
But it also, like, because it really, I mean, because we haven't really talked about this, and this is something that I actually find fascinating with this show as well, like exactly what you're saying, because it starts to talk about the CCTV coverage and it builds personalities off that CCTV. That's very prescient, in a lot of ways. It's in fact it's building that algorithm kind of thing. And that's something Red Dwarf's missed for some time. It's interesting that that's starting to come in. There's like things that we can now talk about, whether or not, like the telephone thing we just talked about, or this in like sort of, how it predicts people's behavior and things. It's kind of like come full circle a little bit, ironically, in a Roberts episode, but it's come full circle to actually, there's stuff to talk about in that regard. And I do find that fascinating that this has come around this way.
But particularly when there's often gags of the retro technology that the show uses that he kind of always wants to. The same with the phone, where the phone was deliberately because that's probably what they would have done in the 80s to try and make a cordless phone. In the next scene, it's VHSs that Lister's dad leaves him.
Yeah.
To watch. It's a VHS. It's a tape video. It's not a disc. They kind of deliberately make that conscious decision to, and he might have eaten up some of the budget to try and find a bunch of VHSs.
If they wanted to be really, really referential, they could have made them triangular.
That's true. That's very true. Yeah. Another thing, which is only just cottoned onto my mind as well, talking about Cassandra and 14 years difference, and I'm talking from a Star Trek perspective, and it's not happened here because this didn't exist now, but it's just something that I find fascinating, is that you look at the cadence that Cassandra speaks compared to Pre. Pre is literally like rhyming off hundreds of words a second. She's like going, you no longer need to have this conversation, 98%, blah, 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 blah. Cassandra is very much like, I've seen it. It's already happened. And that, in some ways, just shows you how fast people perceive things now. Because I remember watching the very first episode of Star Trek Lower Decks and thinking, my God, that's fast. It was literally just rhyme after rhyme after rhyme. And the rhythms of this is like a lot quicker than what we'd expect, which works for it in its style. But I just think, in comparison with Cassandra, that's an interesting thing that I've just noticed just now, really. Shall we talk about the next scene? Shall we talk about this? Shall we talk about Throbbo? No memory of the previous night. Lister comes out of a trolley with his his kebab as a pillow. He's got a letter with a VHS on it, which has to Dad Love Dave, or to Dave Love Dad, even. And he slides the VHS into a machine underneath the desk and uses a remote control. And then we see Daddy Dave.
So I want to go back. Where's the worst place you've woken up with a hangover? Have you woken up in a bath?
No, I don't really do that. I have a homing beacon. So, like, my brain just goes, oh. So I could be literally talking to you now. I'd be absolutely kishnickered. And then all of a sudden, I'll just see a fire door and I'll walk out that fire door and I'm home. So I tend to like sort of either crash on the couch or crash in the bed. I don't have any real stories of me doing anything other than that, really. I think the only time that I've maybe fell asleep, actually, like you say, like in nightclubs and stuff, where I've nodded off and gone, oh crap, and then I've gone home. That's as close as I've ever been to doing something like that.
I mean, I've had classics like waking up on a sofa in a house I don't know and leaving without even saying hello to whose fucking house it was. But the best one, woke up and no memory of the previous night. Looked to my left. Well done, Mark. He's hot. Looked to my right. Well done, Mark. He's hot too. No memory. No memory of it. But I'm quite proud of it.
I just have no idea what happened, but it's fine.
No, we had lots of sex. It's great. Well, as good as it can be when you've got a hangover and you've got to worry about 2 cocks. Well, 3 cocks.
I'm glad you corrected yourself there. I was like, hang on a second. Anyway, let's get back to Daddy Dave. Daddy Dave is an experience. Mark, you're the first one. We saw this live watching you watch it. What did you think to it on your first watch?
Howled, absolutely howled. The guitar, genius, just brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
You and Colin especially howled at that guitar joke. I remember that quite vividly. Yeah. It was like,
oh yeah. And I loved the "you don't understand me, I hate you" when he's the same bloke.
Bastard.
Brilliant. Just brilliant.
I always howl, and he said he does a good drunk when he falls off the chair and then falls off it again. That yeah. Time, it's just because he's got this cheeky smile when he gets back up. It's just brilliant, and it's apple juice, I think it is, isn't it, Matt? Because I think he did talk about that in a making of or a 3 million years thing. But it obviously is just apple juice that he's firing down. But he does such a good job of portraying the two characters, and and it's wrong. You think I'm going to do what you say, do you? Wrong.
Well, the fact is, like, no, just play it. So do that bit, then play the next bit of video. I was, so you do that? And I was, no, because I know you played it. You jumped ahead, didn't you?
Wonderful.
Now enroll in the engineering program, get the tooth fixed, and find Chrissy.
Daddy discipline, and he just that little handshake of like slapping him across the face. Oh, you get some more daddy discipline. It's brilliant. I also like that he's unshaven in the video, and he's obviously had a few, maybe like a couple of days stubble on the following thing, just to give the idea of concepts of time and change. But yeah, it's a great the and again goes back to, like, for me, I think that this is a highlight. This is like what Matt was saying last week with the moose joke. This is high up in my list of favourite moments. It's not necessarily the best moment I've ever seen, but it is up there with some of the best dwarf in the BBC era for me. I'm doing okay.
It's great.
I think, but again, it's like it's exploring a different side of character to Lister that we've not really seen before.
It's going up,
so it's doing something new. It feels in character, and it's just enjoyable to watch because it's capitalising and building on the lore and backstory of Lister as a character, and addressing quite a few of his flaws as well. I just think it's a really good scene.
Well, Mark, I think you maybe asked this question a while back about is it just going to be the same old Red Dwarf, or are they going to even reference the fact they're getting older? And this kind of showcases that they are actually, showcasing they are older than what they are. Obviously, the dad figure, and and utilizing that. I think that's an answer to that question for you, really. I think.
Yeah, I think so.
This is the second reference of Chrissy.
Yes. Find Chrissy. So she's gone somewhere.
Build a proper home. Find Chrissy. He can build a proper home. So I think that's utilising that. And as you say, the guitar gag. I mean, it's in, again, I mentioned it before, but on my backdrop, you can see the guitar case. It's just brilliant because it's just like, it's the way that Craig Charles plays it and looks at it and goes, what's he up to? And knowing, like, and I think talking about like sort of new audiences, if the new audience probably won't have as much connection to that as we would, they would find it funny, but we know it's his whole nature, the fact that that guitar is his whole thing. And for himself as his dad to throw it out of an airlock and put it half a light year away is great. The fact that he's just gone, right, I know what will really piss him off is going to be his guitar. And, that is such a parent, adult, child thing to do, isn't it? It's just like say, okay, let's throw the Xbox out the window. Let's hide the PS5.
Very much so. Very much so. And I had various things confiscated as a kid. I don't think my dad ever destroyed any of my shit, but he definitely confiscated my Sinclair Spectrum.
Slight deviation. I just jumped ahead, but the trivia section of this episode, about, because of the fact it's Rimmer that's points out the Ouroboros stuff. I'll read this paragraph. It's unknown how Rimmer recalls the events of Ouroboros. It's possible they uploaded the old Rimmer's memories, who went off to be Ace Rimmer, to the new hologram who was rescued by the nanobots and back to the red, becoming a hologram again at some point, or whatever. However, Rimmer, in any incarnation, was not actually present during any of the events of Ouroboros, so must have somehow been informed after the fact.
Well, you know, they have got a number of years where they have to talk at some point.
Yeah, I think he's just been told, hasn't he?
Wait a minute. You're your own dad. You were left in a cardboard box. You're gonna talk about that, aren't you, at some point? Even if the cat says it.
I think that's the answer.
Rimmer's TV watching habits of where the South win. It's certainly an interest. I mean, we've got Man in High Castle as a perfect example of that, isn't it? Where, you know, Germans are actually the winners of World War. So Pre has already watched them and he didn't enjoy it.
Brilliant.
I mean, Cassandra was obviously like trying to survive herself. She's just going, yeah, well, I'm doing everything for you. And obviously it plays up because, you know, the fact that he needs to repair the ship. So she's repaired the ship as he would repair it is just fantastic. But yeah, the TV scene.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's perfect. It's perfect.
The South win, Matt, the TV show, and the blonde dies, unfortunately, and he didn't enjoy it. What do you think to the TV? Because the TV is clearly like, it's on its side for Pre, and it's clearly a normal TV that's put in a landscape view because it's got an archway at the bottom of the screen. The
economics of making the...
I like how they put like 3 gold things on to cover it though. They've put like they've done some effort.
I didn't notice that, but I think you were looking at it in a different way to be main host compared to me. I'm still in kind of happy, joy, new Red Dwarf mode. Maybe I need to watch these a few more times because that's the second thing that I've missed that is quite easy to spot.
I wouldn't worry about it. Enjoy it. This is like it's an education, Mark. It's an education.
Yeah, no, I've just seen it yourself. Yeah, I've seen it myself. It's a TV just rotated.
I mean, the monitors are fine because they're in the right landscape, but it's clearly a TV that's just been rotated. It's fascinating, but it is in the bunk because the bunks are out there. But the fact that she watched it, as I say, the build up to the show, and that kind of like maybe you can finally read War and Peace, and he wants to relax. Everyone, I think, can relate to that, where you just kind of go, I know I have to edit an episode of Shipwrecked and Comatose, but I want to go home and relax. You know, it's that kind, isn't it? It's always that kind of like, no, you've got it. You never do the main thing that you always would want to do. It's always got to be something easier. And I think people can relate to that.
Any of you ever heard, I don't know if I've spoken about this on this podcast. I remember speaking to someone. Have you ever heard of something called the CSA? It's a kind of mockumentary set in a world where the Confederates won. So it's like a documentary. It's framed like a British documentary. So a British documentary team was allowed entry into the CSA to film it, and they discover a kind of shocking revelation that will change the whole way the CSA is run. And so they got this film out, but the documentary team were never seen again. And it's just basically this documentary about the states, but if the confederations win, and it's basically just legalized slavery. So it opens up with this says, "We look after you and your property," and he pans across to basically a gardener who's black, and the idea you suddenly realise, crap, this is what happens when slavery is legal in the modern day, and it's a fascinating kind of like look into kind of like racist depictions from early stuff, but it's whenever anyone brings up that alternative history, that always brings into mind of that film, which seems like no one's ever heard of, apart from me.
Yeah, I'd say the Man in High Castle's kind of the Frank Spotnitz show. So, as I say, they go to B deck and B deck's completely destroyed, and which is great. And there's a thing in here, and it's the other way around for me. It's when everything's breaking down and they don't have the conversation, and then Rimmer looks at Cryan and just like nods at him and then walks away. And there's a scene in Star Trek Picard season 3 where Picard's walking down like the ship, and he's surrounded by a guard of honor, and he looks at the guy, and you find out he's actually there's a baddie in there, but Picard looks at the guy and nods, and I instantly think of Rimmer. It's like it's the way that like Patrick Stewart nods, and it's like exactly the same as the way he does it in here. I can't get over that anymore. It's like because it's just the way he points at Crichton, and then goes nod. Back in the Medibay, you've got to think ahead, Mark.
You do. Yes, you do. It's just so beautifully catty. They've got the cat. But I mean, obviously they have. But it's fun. It's so much fun. You
didn't think ahead.
Think ahead.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, but I think this goes well. Well, can't you just share it? Never ask a cat to share.
Yeah. Again, look, the way my cat protects her food. Yeah, absolutely.
And then we get to the final kind of moments, really. The kind of final act is that that Daddy Dave has resigned from the Jupiter Minership Corporation. And that means that Pri has the ability to eject him from the ship. And former crewman Lister has to be tricked into going outside with... How do you think this last act worked? Did it work for you, Matt? Did it not work? Is it a bit ropey? Do you find it great? How do you feel about the last few scenes here?
I liked it. I didn't love it, but I think it's kind of an interesting. But I think particularly with how the story works is that I think it's more or less the plot kicks in to bring some kind of peril, which stakes or raise tension or something, just because the show can. Kind of loses a bit of the character work that was happening with Lister, even though it does build up to the fact that the events, everything that's been the resolution is caused because of what Lister did. Lister did by setting up his own son and stuff. It does feel as if the plot overruns and takes away a bit of the character focus of the episode, and kind of like the A and B plots kind of flip around. So suddenly the B plot's now the A plot, and the A plot's now the B plot. So a bit uneven on that bit, but I don't know. I think it's quite clever. I think it is clever how Lister tricks Pri into like shutting down. But it is something that. But it is kind of something we have seen before, where Lister kind of uses his kind of like talent for empathy and quick thinking to kind of resolve and out-trick the untrickable.
Yeah.
Because I know you mentioned Cassandra, and in the past, in that episode, he kind of works out what a plan is.
Yeah.
And I think he does it. There's another one where he does something similar. I think, is it Inquisitor?
Oh, you mean Justice in the Justice Field with the sim?
Yeah, it's something that the show's done before, where he manages to out-trick intelligences more advanced than him, and I can't. Yeah, I think it's that. It's happened a few times.
What do you think, Mark, to this final act then? Because there's a little bit to go as well. There's the obviously Lister has to get off the ship, and then he has this kind of 2001 moment where he comes back. And you've also got now that Lister's gone, the mission's changed as well. So what do you make to this final act?
I think it's very, very dwarfy. It feels similar in kind of convoluted complexity to something like Thanks for the Memory. Maybe not quite as complex, but it feels like chain of events, all kind of, it's tied up in a bow, everybody's safe again. It feels like that, and I'm down with that.
I was surprised that they allowed Craig Charles to have so many props, to be fair.
That's not the question you asked.
I know, but I'm just...
Oh man, this you just wait to there's a whole section dedicated to that on the 3 million years.
Yeah, there
isn't there? Like where there's like and it's like a montage of just him breaking
But yeah, well, the reason why I say that for is, as I say, you get shunted out the airlock, and then we get there's the scene in which is the final kind of push before Lister comes and saves the day with Lister Junior, where they have like 90 years, or did I say years? Which seems a bit weird that Pre would get that wrong. Oh, I meant minutes. And they would drive into the sun.
She's become malicious at this point, though. It feels like rather than logical and emotionless, it does feel like she's become malicious, or at least it did to me.
But is that down to logic and predictive behaviour of the crew?
Yeah, exactly that. She's got that from Rimmer.
So, and I think it is quite interesting. I think this is something I know Mark's mentioned this on particular episodes I've not been in that deal with AI and the kind of depiction of empathy and stuff, and particularly Crichton, and in some places Holly, in that they develop because of age. The programs kind of end up accumulating logic and into some kind of emotion and stuff, which gives them traces of humanity, which is down to Lister's influence. And in some places, you could argue the same thing is actually with Rimmer, because all Rimmer is an AI that's just got duplicated subroutines of a memory cell. So you've got, whereas with Pre, she just automatically just goes over the edge because she just constantly goes Skynet and just thinks, oh yeah, so no matter everything that I calculate, it's going to end up in catastrophe, so we're just going to drive into the sun. And it is down to Lister's
resignation. And
it's Lister's humanity and quick thinking that saves the day to it. So I find that quite interesting, particularly when you've got other AI characters in the show.
The fact that it kind of become very Red Dwarf 8 as well when he's flying back into the scoop. It just reminded me of that. And then, like we say with the fact that when he gets on board and we get a bit of tension with the stasis and joining up and linking up together with that you then get what Mark was a bit like thing with when they're all like sort of enjoying themselves and playing music and air guitar and the like, and that's in the trailer. And it's interesting, like, well, why are they all enjoying themselves? And obviously it's because they've literally just been spared their lives because Liz saved them. So
yeah, I enjoyed that dance immensely.
Well, I did like the laughing gas though as well. I did thought the laughing gas section was quite funny. It's like, oh yeah, we're all going to die, and it's like, so she sealed it up. It's that's fine. Which I thought, so I enjoyed that aspect of it too.
The thing about laughing gas is it affects organic mammalian bodies, and neither Crichton nor Rimmer would be susceptible to a gas. I don't care, but it's a snag up, isn't it?
That's true.
And it's undeniably funny, but yeah. Neither of them are breathing that shit in.
And that comes to the end of the episode. Is there anything that I missed? Any notes that you've got? Anything you want to discuss?
There's a few deleted scenes.
Okay.
On this, those on the DVD/Blu-ray, and he's referenced on the wiki again. So there's a bit after the flushing out guitar where Lister's going down the corridor upset and waves it to Rimmer saying, "It's not fair, it's not," to him and stuff. There's a scene where I think you actually see there's a scene where he actually chickens out of the where he sits down to do the operation on his tooth, and then that's when he runs out. There's apparently a bit more of Rimmer deciding whether he'd prefer to be switched off or left on to burn to death. And there's apparently a scene, the cat wonders how hot the star is, and Crichton going, "It's very hot." And I think there's actually another scene where Liz actually applying for the robotics course as well. It's been cut out, which, on the sounds of it, just seems to be there and not actually funny. So it's been quite a few kind of transitional scenes, I think, that.
Yeah, the robotics course actually comes out at the very end, doesn't it? Because they say about the I'm going to pass it. He says about the passing the robotics course, and then he gets the 0G, and it's not kickboxing, it's something else, isn't it? Total Football. And he says, like, the weekend, your ice is mine. I always thought that was a bit weird that it just comes out of nowhere, that thing. I'm going to sign up to the robotics mechanism, so engineering course. So that makes a bit of sense. Yeah. So that's it. Mark, have you got anything else that you want to mention?
The only thing, it's quite frivolous, but it's well known that I am a massive Doctor Who fan, and the spiky wall things. There's an episode of Doctor Who called Paradise Towers from the 80s, which had these evil cleaners in it. And this reminded me of that so much, the peril of these cleaners coming towards you through corridors. You couldn't get past them. And it's kind of irrelevant, really. But Paradise Towers is a fun Doctor Who story from Sylvester McCoy.
There's a part where Pree distracts Lister by having someone say Dave. Now, is that archive vocal takes of Chloe and Annette? Is it supposed to? I think it's supposed to sound like a Chansky.
It sounds more like one of the girls that we get when he's falling in love with the dispenser. It sounds like her a little bit. I'm not sure if it is, but it could be her. But yeah, but as you say, calling to the empathy of him, that he hears that and he wants to naturally go and find out what that is. If it is Kachansky, then, because Chrissy was mentioned, go and find a home in the episode. So
there's also the idea of, is it JMC owned oxygen?
Yeah.
Or like the supply, like you're no longer a crew member, so you're no longer entitled to free oxygen. Might want to understand what I'm saying, but I immediately am thinking of the episode M-Core. That kind of has shades of that, which I think is series 12, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Unless you've got anything else, it is time for us to depart. Matt, thank you for joining us on these 2 episodes.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt. Thanks, Kurt.
There's been no smeg ups there whatsoever.
No, thank you for having me. No, I say, yeah. I mean, I've been really looking forward to reaching series 10. So I'm actually quite excited to listen to the other 4 as a listener.
It's a short time away before we can start watching Red Dwarf 11. We're a third of the way through. And we'll be watching that in the near future. So before that, though, we do have 4 episodes to go. Matt, thank you again. Where can people find you online?
Quickest way to find me would be to go to Linktree/Matt Latham, which has links to all me sorts of stuff, including Pick a Disc Music Podcast, Ask Us About Loom, podcast about point-and-click adventures, and other sorts of stuff if you are so inclined to be interested in a little more.
Excellent. Mark?
At Mark Adams HC on Twitter and Instagram, at Chucky Vision for my Chucky podcast, and if you live in Manchester, I run a pub quiz. It's dead good. It's at Head in Stretford every Wednesday, 8:00.
That's not social media. That's like, where can people come and get you?
Yeah. I've actually had a team turn up because they listen to this podcast, which is pretty fucking amazing.
Wow.
I was delighted. And they only knew about my quiz because they listened to this and they were like, well, I'll go and meet him, which is fucking batshit, really. So I thought I'd advertise that.
Yeah, great stuff. You can find me on Linktree at Linktree/rmuldrake, RMULDRAKE. You can find my Star Trek podcast, Make It So, on Linktree/Make It Slow. Make it slow. Seriously, I'm so tired. I am so tired.
Make it slow, Jin.
Make it slow. Make it slow.
Make it slow, Jin.
Make It So on Linktree. And the Magic Box Pod for my Lost podcast, which is going to be showing episodes or hearing episodes and whatever else I can talk about, is going to be talking about episodes from the show from the 20th anniversary, the 22nd of September 2024, but we are showcasing episodes on the run-up to it. So please come and find me on there. Other than that, thank you all for joining us and for listening in to another episode of Red Dwarf and our coverage of it. Until next time, remember as always,
that's because you didn't think ahead.
Geschnickered
and Comatose.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast, was created and produced by Mark Adams
That's
and
me.
Kurt North. You can find us on Twitter at Red Dwarf Pod, and we are part of the We Made This Podcast network.
That's us.